Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the regular council meeting for March 20th, 2017. The clerk tonight will be Ms. Sheila Gurry. I want to first recognize that we're on the traditional territory of the Nanaimo First Nations. And first off, I want to provide some council decorum. The meeting of council is intended to be a place where democracy can freely take place in a respectful and safe manner. The council chambers is a workplace that there are considerations council and staff must take to ensure that a safe work environment exists. Each councillor brings to the meeting their own individual personalities, attributes, abilities, and values. Each member of council is required to be respectful, not interrupt or disrupt another member of council, staff, or the public when they do not have the floor. Important attributes of the mayor and councillors include being fair and reasonable, objectionable and impartial, firm but friendly, confident but considerate, tactful and courteous, confining discussion to within the scope of the meeting and within reasonable limits of time. Therefore, there will be no cheering, jeering, or other outbursts from the gallery to ensure that anyone speaking, whether it be a delegation, member of council, or staff, is not interrupted and do so freely without fear of ridicule. The microphones of anyone that has been inappropriate or has exceeded their time limit will be cut off. If there are outbursts by any person in the gallery, they may be asked to stop, and they do not comply, they will be asked to leave. A recess is another tool that we may use in order to reset the environment of the council chambers. It's our belief that if everyone is respectful of these basic considerations, this meeting and future meetings will be more effective in furthering the business of the City of Nanaimo. Ms. Gurry, can we have late items, please?
Is this working?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. For late items this evening, we are adding a report and bylaw for the proposed amendments to Officers' Appointment and Delegation Bylaw 2006, number 7031. And we're replacing pages 14 and 15 of the agenda with pages 5 and 6 of the addendum for item 9A, liquor license application number LA125 for 1724 Stewart Avenue. And that's it, Your Worship.
Thank you. I have a request by Mr. Don Bonner to be a delegation under 7B. And I would also like to bring forward a reconsideration of the motion of February 20th with respect to a resolution that we would be putting forward to the AVICC considering the setting of leases by the Nanaimo Port Authority. And I will be speaking to that upon reconsideration. Any other items, Council? Seeing none, motion to adopt the agenda as amended. Councillor Brennan. Councillor Hong. Thank you. Discussion. Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. First item. I'm going to move right down to 7A, and that is under council appointments to the Parcel Tax Roll Review Panel. The purpose is to request that council appoint no less than 3 council members to the Parcel Tax Roll Review Panel as required under the Community Charter. There's a recommendation on page 4. Do we have a mover for the recommendation to get the item on the floor?
So moved that we appoint 3 council members and an alternate to the Parcel Tax Roll.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Brennan. Thank you. Motion is on the floor. Discussion.
Well, may I speak?
Certainly.
That we identify the 3 members and an alternate that would like to serve with the next meeting coming up on April 13th at 2 p.m.
Thank you. Do you have anyone? Did you wish to nominate anyone?
I'll nominate myself.
Any other nominations? Okay. Councillor Hong?
I'll nominate myself.
Okay, thank you. And I would volunteer for the position as well. Okay, Councillor Fuller's requesting to be the alternate. Okay, any further discussion? One question with respect to it, Ms. Gurry, if I could. It says that the parcel tax roll review panel for 1 year term ending 2018 December 31. When will the inaugural meeting of the next council be? Will it not be November or late October?
Yes, Your Worship, it'll be the council meeting immediately following the election in 2018, so that would have to be altered unless there's no meeting between the inauguration and the end of this term, when then the term would just end. Regardless, if you were members or not, you would no longer be members if you no longer held office.
Okay. So then there'd be a requirement at the inaugural meeting to appoint members to the roll panel or roll review panel.
This is an annual report, Your Worship, so if there is no, for next year, the term, we could alter it to be ending a little bit sooner than that.
So here we are in March, and it's saying to the term ending December 31st, 2018.
I think that might be a typo, Your Worship.
Well, I'll speak if I can, please.
I think it should be 2017, December 31st, 2017, Your Worship, so.
Great, thank you. So Councillor Bestwick, you've moved the motion.
That Hong, Bestwick, McKay, alternate Fuller serve in the capacity for this parcel roll tax with the meeting to be held April 13th at 2 p.m.
For the term ending December 31st, 2017?
Yes, we only meet once, so this will be it.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next one is proposed amendments to officers' appointment and delegation bylaw number 7031. And the purpose is to obtain council approval of proposed amendments to officers' appointment and delegation bylaw. So we got first, second, and third reading. We do have a delegation. Mr. Don Bonner.
Just before the delegation gets up, can we do these one, are they seriatim?
Oh, absolutely, yes. Mr. Bonner.
Thank you. Don Bonner from Nanaimo. Quay Council. I'm here to talk about two things tonight. The use of addendum items in the agenda and changes to bylaw 7031. In the procedures bylaw, part 16.1 deals with late items. There are two reasons for adding an addendum to the agenda as a late item. Items that are essential.
Sir, we granted you license to come up and discuss the item that's on the floor, which is the delegation bylaw 7031. Okay. Not the issue of addendums to the agenda.
But it is an addendum to the agenda.
It is.
And I wanted to speak to
No,
why it's on
I'll
there.
let you speak to 7031, the delegation bylaw that we have on page 2 to 4.
So just out of curiosity, when would somebody be able to speak about the use of addendum items on agendas?
You can certainly ask questions in question period.
Okay, I'll move on to that then.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fuller?
Well, couldn't he apply to appear as a delegation to a committee of the whole meeting to speak to that?
Certainly, but it is on the agenda tonight. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, but question period would probably be appropriate, or a committee of the whole meeting.
Okay. The second part of my presentation is on the bylaw changes. I see no need to make the HR job a director. I would like to have staff explain why this is so important that it needs to be done in such short notice. Why, after so many years of the HR manager doing his job, are we now making the position a director? That information has been provided in the report to council. Also, the report by staff doesn't mention what duties that position will be assigned. In the report, you will see the community charter states that council may, by bylaw, establish other officer positions and may assign powers, duties, and functions to those officers' positions. It would be unusual to establish an officer without assigning powers, duties, and functions. We do not need another layer of title bureaucracy in our city. All other positions assigned by councils have duties. This one doesn't. And why is that? Now on to the most important part of this report to council. Staff is recommending that council add 4.1.1, The Chief Administrative Officer may, by written authorization, appoint the Chief Financial Officer as the Deputy Chief Administrative Officer. The Deputy Chief Administrative Officer shall act as the Chief Administrative Officer if the Chief Administrative Officer becomes ill or otherwise prevented from fulfilling the role of the Chief Administrative Officer. If Council agrees to this very important addition to the bylaw, they will be giving up their role to choose who is to run our city, basically giving that role to the CAO to pick their successor. As our elected officials, you do not have a lot of jobs to do. However, one of those jobs to do is to pick the person who will run our city. You have only one employee, and you're responsible to pick that employee. Now, you can pass a bylaw that says the Chief Financial Officer will take over duties of the CEO in the event that they are unable to perform their job, and that would be fine because then it is your choice. However, to allow the CAO the option to choose or not choose the CFO puts too much power into the hands under the CFO. This is not accountable to the citizens when one non-elected person has the right to choose who runs our city. The perceived conflict of interest by making this an option for the CEO is much too high. Finally, Section 14 of the bylaw that you are asked to amend states, no delegation by a delegate. For clarity, a person to whom a power, duty, or function has been delegated under this bylaw has no authority to further delegate to another person any power, duty, or function that has been delegated by this bylaw. To me, this means that the CAO can't delegate the CAO's duties to someone else. If you're going to agree to this bylaw, are you going to repeal Section 14? Again, more questions than answers, and that is why I'm asking Council to not approve this bylaw addition to Bylaw 7031.
Ms. Gray.
Thank you, Worship. Just a couple clarifications. The HR director already is a director, so this isn't changing his title to director. It's just adding him as an officer under the bylaw, if council chooses to do so. And as for the deputy chief administrative officer and appointment of the chief financial officer as the designate in the absence of the CAO is just that, in the absence of the CAO, just for illnesses or absences, not of a permanent nature in any way.
Thank you. Ms. Samra, the microphones are, the call buttons for the 6 positions are not working, so we just have to try and get my attention. Okay, Ms. Samra.
Thank you. I'm coming late to this agenda item, but Ms. Gray certainly has provided some context. And what you have to take a look at is that this existing bylaw has been in place for a number of years, over a decade. And how it works is that certain powers and authorizations are delegated both under the community charter and by bylaw to the chief administrative officer as a matter of necessity and legal requirements so that any city manager or CAO is able to carry out their functions and their duties. And this includes a whole range of being able to hire and terminate and discipline and suspend staffing. All of the staffing is the responsibility of the CAO. If you remember when I first came here, I started with some of the reorganizations, and that's a deliberate decision by the provincial government and provincial lawmakers in ordering to have a divide between mayor and council and the top executive within each of the municipalities. There's a balance of powers and appropriate measures being put in place. The amendments that we have coming in front of us are meant to provide a greater level of comfort and protection both to the Director of Human Resources as well as, and probably out of an abundance of caution because I can delegate when you're designated to act while someone's leaving, that you do get all the functions and powers. But it would just be nicer to have the CFO designated as a deputy CAO just to make sure that there's no ambiguity over the scope of powers that they can exercise. As you know, there's going to be a period of time where I'm only going to be here on a limited basis, and in order for the city to function well and to function in the same manner that it functions today and has for decades, city manager after city manager after city manager, we're adopting the status quo and the standard practice. This is an amendment that's necessary so that Mr. Mema is able to carry out those duties while I'm gone. And the legislation and the bylaw has given those authorities to the CAO to determine who's appropriate to act in one or more positions at any given time. The staff are my responsibility. Their well-being is my responsibility. The law clearly delegates that to me. That way you don't have elected officials starting to get involved in union grievances and in whether or not someone should be accommodated by moving their desk 2 floors down or 1 floor down. We've seen already what happens when elected officials start to meddle in the decision-making and the management of unionized staff and exempt staff at the manager and director level. So it is a deliberate drafting of legislation. It's a deliberate decision. This is consistent with how it's always been done. It's definitely, I think, what's needed for Mr. Mema, and it's something that I would like to extend to Mr. Van Horn. Richard currently is the only other director level that's being covered. We did do amendments to this, I think, about 6 months ago when we were updating it to reflect the fact that most of the general manager levels had been removed. So respectfully, these are the recommendations we put before you. They've gone through legal counsel. They're consistent with the law of British Columbia. They're consistent with best practices for municipalities within our province, and we're quite confident in recommending these to you.
Thank you. Councillor
Can I grab a water?
Councillor Hong, do you have a question for the delegation?
No.
Okay. Does any member of council have any questions for the delegation? Seeing none, thank you, sir. Motion to receive the delegation.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Bestwick, seconded by Councillor Hong. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Councillor Hong.
Thank you. Through you to staff, couldn't we change chief financial officer to any officer? Like, if the CAO feels whoever is best suited, because then 4.11 says the deputy chief administrative officer shall, act. But why couldn't we just change that to any officer? They can appoint any officer by written consent. It should be up to the CAO to choose whoever they see fit, because this is just being too precise.
There, if I may, Your Worship, through the chair, there are specific designations under the community charter that require us to designate certain individuals and deputy individuals to carry out certain tasks. So, for example, Victor is designated as the chief financial officer underneath the legislation, and you do have deputy financial officers. And that means that they have a certain skill set and background that enable them to carry that out. Likewise, with Ms. Gurry's shop, she's designated as a corporate officer, and you have deputy corporate officers. So there are different skill sets in our job descriptions and our hiring practices that enable certain individuals to be able to carry out those duties. Not everybody can step into the role of a city manager and have the requisite set of skills to be able to do that. So it is a little bit more narrow. I envision that the chief operating officer is a similar one to the CFO that could step in and be acting. But at the moment, those are the only two positions that are positioned to act at a longer period of time with the appropriate skill sets that is needed by the city. If I were, for example, to have to go on leave for 6 or 9 months, at that point, you might think whether or not you're going to do the continuous acting or you bring somebody else in to act during that period.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Fuller.
What if the CAO and chief financial officer are sharing a ride in the same car gets hit, both dead? Well, it's an extreme situation, but it goes to what Councillor Hong was saying, that by limiting it to the chief financial officer, we got no one in a lead position.
So if it would take you to reference, the city would still be able to operate because we have a business continuity plan and we have the appropriate check signers and administrators to carry out the core services to the community. And he would be able to get the assistance from legal counsel. I think during that part, some of the ones that are very specific to the CAO about recruiting, hiring, suspending, and firing, those types of activities could probably be dealt with in another manner. You bring in somebody act. I think there's hundreds of people that are on the LGMA roster available to come down and act in those circumstances. But, you raise the possibility of things. But that's why we have a business continuity plan coming in.
Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you very much. Without a motion on the floor yet to deal with, but my only comments are that this is a business continuity scenario. This has been here for the last 2 decades that I know of. As I've been sitting here, should there be a circumstance where the CAO and the deputy may not be able to be in attendance, then some of those duties and responsibilities can or may fall onto the mayor, depending on who else is available. This is an emergency basis, short-term or interim. I think for continuity, for understanding if somebody isn't available for a short-term period of time or while on vacation or whatever the case might be, then everybody on staff knowing who the deputy is important instead of, well, one of the 3 is, are we going to do paper, scissors, rocks the next morning, or, we're going to flip a coin? So this is nothing new. This is just simply the way that business is done, and we're identifying who the CAO is on an interim basis in a replacement fashion during the absence of our CAO. And this has been going on for decades. So there's nothing new here. There's nothing sinister here. This has been going on forever. So if I could, I'd like to make the first reading. The recommendation that council give first reading to Officers Appointment and Delegation Amendment Bylaw 2017, number 7031.06.
Thank you. Second, it's moved by Councillor Bestwick and seconded by Councillor Hong. Discussion.
Sorry.
Councillor Bestwick. Okay. I've got a couple of questions. Ms. Samra, you had mentioned somewhere in your description there that this provides one of the ideas, the Section 3.1D amendment or inclusion under D, the Director of Human Resources, was for his protection. Can you elaborate on that?
Certainly. So with the number, as you are well aware, that the community charter has certain instances so that while the power to delegate decision-making over hiring and firing and promotion and suspension, there's also something in the community charter that requires that if the city, for no reason, no cause, wanted to remove an officer, the threshold for doing so is higher. And over the years, there's been 15 positions on there, 5 positions on there. It's sort of been all over the place. I think right now the city clerk enjoys that because you're appointed as an officer, the CFO and deputies. And in this instance, Terry Hartley used to be carried by it, but when we updated it, we didn't include that for the Director of Human Resources. So this is for John, recognizing the pivotal role he plays in a senior position, and makes that threshold for removal for no reason to be a vote of 6 at the council table.
Well, if I could, supplemental, would that not, as it stands right now, regardless of who the Director of HR is, that applies to both employees and officers?
No, Your Worship, it does not. These are specific things that are contemplated by the community charter. So the driving force here is the community charter. It's identified key positions within the organization that take on a considerable amount of risk and stress and significant job duties, and has decided to treat them differently. And I think that's an important point to point out, because when you look at the city clerk, the CAO, the CFO, we have legislative duties about complying with the law. and not using money in a way you shouldn't use it, and not disclosing personal information, not breaching confidentiality. We are the bearers of compliance. And because we have that role, it's sometimes can be viewed. I think the reason why they would have put probably don't try to guess why the provincial government did it, but because of that extra statutory duty of integrity and of complying with the law, complying with finance, complying with privacy laws, each of these positions must at different times speak up and say the law is not being followed and make recommendations about that. And that takes away the ability of council to simply say that person needs to be gone. It requires a higher threshold, a majority plus one of council, to say that they want to let that person go. So that's really why that's there. And the head of HR was there before. It inadvertently got omitted and should be back there because they're going to tell us truths about collective bargaining and about employee rights and about different processes.
Thank you. Councillor Bestwick?
Thank you. Just one of the point that I'd like to make is that officers require a 2/3 majority of council to be dismissed. Is that correct? And so that just to your points. So.
Okay, any other questions? Seeing none, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? You're in favor? Yes. Thank you.
Where's him? He's on the phone too?
Thank you. Motion carries. Second reading.
I'd so move that council give second reading to officers' appointment and delegation amendment bylaw 2017 number 7031.06.
And seconded by Councillor Hong. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
I would so move that council give third reading to officers' appointment and delegation amendment bylaw 2017 number 7031.06.
Seconded by Councillor Hong. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
That's fine.
Yep. And that will be adopted when, Ms. Gray?
Next Monday, Your Worship.
Thank you. All right. Next item. Parks and Trails Parcel Tax Bylaw. And the purpose is to introduce Parcel Tax Roll Preparation Bylaw 2017, number 7238 for first, second, and third reading. Is there someone prepared to move the recommendation? Moved by Councillor Brennan. Is there a seconder?
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Bestwick. Discussion. Councillor Bestwick?
No, sorry.
Okay, thank you. Discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Is there a mover for second reading? Moved by Councillor Brennan, seconded by Councillor Bestwick. Discussion. Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Third one, motion for third reading. Councillor Brennan, seconded by Councillor Bestwick. Discussion. Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next item. Community Services, liquor license application number LA 125. Councillor Hong.
Your Worship, I'm in conflict of interest with the liquor license, so I'm going to excuse myself.
Thank you. Councillor Yoakum, you're with us? Yes, I can. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. The purpose is to present council with an application for the existing liquor primary license for Carlos O'Brien's Neighborhood Pub to extend their hours of liquor service at 1724 Stewart Avenue. Councillor Bestwick.
The council recommend the Liquor Control and Licensing Branch approve an application to extend the hours of liquor service for the existing liquor primary license for the property located at 1724 Stewart Avenue as follows. Must I read the balance?
No.
Thank you.
Yep. As as documented in the agenda. Okay, so moved. Is there a seconder? Councillor Brennan. I will. Okay, discussion. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, under Community Services, 9B. FireSmart Grant Resolution. The purpose is to obtain a council resolution supporting a $10,000 FireSmart grant program offered by the Union of BC Municipalities.
Getting support for a $10,000 FireSmart grant program offered by UBCM.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Brennan, seconded by Councillor Bestwick. Discussion. Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. There are no bylaws. Correspondence. Letter dated February 28th from John Lefebvre, Chair of the Cowichan Valley Regional District, regarding the 2018 BC Summer Games. I need to, has Council got that correspondence? I'd like to bring up an item with respect to that. Do we have the capacity to be able to negotiate the use of our pool? Ms. Sammer.
I'll take it back to staff. I cannot answer that on the fly.
Good, thank you. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. I was just going to recommend that we refer this to Parks and Recreation Director, Mr. Harding, to review and bring back his recommendation at his earliest convenience.
I think we had our briefing earlier today. Now my memory is being jogged, and this is a reciprocal thing, and they didn't have a sufficient facility for them to do the synchronized down there, and I think it is something that he wants to recommend.
So we'll just refer it back to staff for now, Mr. Harding, and then come back with a report next Monday or whatever.
Yeah.
So we're motion to refer to staff, seconded by Councillor Hong. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Referred back to staff. So the next one, last but not least, is the reconsideration of the AVICC resolution concerning the motion passed on February 20th. Ms. Sammer?
Because that is a multi-part motion, how do you want to do this? Do you want to just reconsider the, it was number 3 in the motion to adopt resolutions regarding, and then it had 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So you want to reconsider the creating a fair market approach to the lease rates for marinas? Is that
Correct.
the one
Correct.
you'd like to reconsider? So when you bring forward your motion to reconsider, it's 06517, and it's number 3 of that motion.
All right, 3. Great, thank you.
And when you're ready, I'll give you the context for this.
Pardon me?
When you're ready, I can give you the context for it.
For my reconsideration?
Oh, you've brought this forward. This isn't the one that's from Bernie Dumas and the Nanaimo Port Authority that was sent to you today?
No, I don't recall any correspondence from Mr. Dumas today.
Okay, I sent it out twice to Mayor and Council. It's my understanding that Mr. Dumas wrote directly to AVICC and asked for them to remove this particular motion. That was then referred back to the City of Nanaimo because it's rather unusual for a port authority to be contacting a municipal organization and directing them to do something that councils have by motion decided to do. So was able to find out that today, had a conversation with the lady down there. You can do something tonight if you wish. If not, there's nothing that will prevent you from making amendments on the floor or taking a different approach to it when you're at the particular event.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I'd like to speak to my motion to reconsider. On February 20th, we passed a resolution which is known as 6517, and it was with respect to the approaches of fair market, setting of fair market leases. And there are 2 different approaches that I can see. First one is the province of BC. Province of BC appears to set, and Mr. Stones can can argue with me if he wants, but they appear to set the lease based on annual increases up to, and they will sign leases up to 30 years. It's unknown how the province determines their values, whether they use a third party or whether they use their own people employed by the government. The Nanaimo Port Authority, they will sign long-term leases based on current lease rates. However, there are 5-year renewals, and this gives anyone who's looking at a long-term project on leased land, federally leased land, to be in some uncertainty. The City of Nanaimo, from what I can see, when we enter into long-term leases, we appear to get into multi-year terms. If we grant a 60-year lease, for example, as we did on one instance when I was on council, that we will provide that lease by way of a 20-year term with 2 renewals, or any variance thereof. And they're all subject to the value assessments every 5 years. So the resolution asks, I've asked 2 board members of the NPA to provide to me a copy of a presentation that was provided by the NPA to either the Port City Liaison Committee or the tripartite meeting, and I've not received one yet. I've not received a copy of that presentation. The NPA, on the other hand, has asked for requested a council board meeting to discuss this issue. The City of Nanaimo at this point has not agreed to a meeting. Us collectively have not agreed to it. My challenge is that when we get to AVICC, with all the new information that I've personally received, I'm going to have difficulty standing at the pro microphone at a convention with a clear understanding of this entire process as to how we wish to change it. There's 2 fair market, you can use the term fair market approach twice. One would be, as I believe we are hearing from concerned operators in the region, that they need a fair market approach in which they can make money. In other words, they need not to be put into a position where their competitors next door, who may be in the same business, are paying a completely different rate or a more competitive rate than what they're paying. So that's one term or one definition of fair market approach. Of course, the other one is for us or any property owner to achieve the highest return on the fair market leases on behalf of the citizens. So if we're responsible for administering the leases on our citizens' properties, that we have to consider the highest fair market value for those leases. The 2 of them can contradict each other. I would suggest that council consider, 1, potential withdrawing of the resolution altogether. 2, withdraw the resolution and after gathering a full understanding of the subject, bring forward a late resolution to the floor at AVICC. Or 3, let the resolution stand, gather as much information as possible, and withdraw the resolution on the convention floor, if we deem it necessary. Ms. Gurry.
Thank you, Your Worship. So if you're reconsidering that motion, that's on the floor, so that has to be dealt with first. So then if you wanted to make alternatives, as you've suggested, I would do so after reconsidering that motion of that we talked about earlier, 05, whatever it was, and then move on to the next ones. But I would strongly suggest the last suggestion you made, because you have already moved and all of council was there, and it came from a council member that's absent this evening that originally wanted to put this down to AVICC as a resolution, that you would go with the last one, and if you wanted to make changes, you would do so at the convention rather than have outsiders influence the decision that council's already made. That's just a suggestion.
Thank you very much. Ms. Sammer.
Thank you. I think this has been a complicated discussion between the City of Nanaimo and the Nanaimo Port Authority, both at the board and council level and at the staff level. And added to this is an organization that's been lobbying the city and the RDN and other port entities to look at alternative approaches to managing the port. And what we've been trying for 2 months now is to have a staff-to-staff meeting. The city received, and we probably should have put it on the correspondence, a letter from the MPA asking the city of Nanaimo to demonstrate support to it on a number of different things, including their conversations about the future of ports. We've been trying to get that meeting, but at the staff level, it's been canceled twice. We're hopeful, third time lucky, that we get to sit down and have that conversation because there's been long presentations to various council members and staff members about methodology. And I think that if we get down into the weeds of what methodology works and what doesn't, it's going to be fairly complex. I think the essence of Councillor Pratt's motion was that it's been in the best interest of the marinas and the marine industry that there be fair and consistent approaches that permit them to prosper and to engage in economic development and that promote economic prosperity within the region. And there's certainly differing opinions amongst the methodologies for that. By taking this motion forward, I don't think you're compromising that. I think you're saying this is an issue that's important for our community, the island, to talk about. We've heard different things. What are the things that we can do to work together to do that? That'll give us the opportunity to finally get that last staff-to-staff meeting, and I think we're very, very close on finding a full board to full council forum for you to talk about that and 2 or 3 other issues they brought up that are very important to them. So we're trying to help and insist on this, and I concur with the recommended approach of Ms. Gurry that it's on the books, it's already being processed, it's ready to go out this week, and that should there be something profoundly different or something else to compel council to change its mind, at least you're able to have that dialogue and move forward. Of course, you can change your mind tonight and take it off, and we can still do that information exploration.
Thank you. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. Just a few comments and then my thoughts. Late items for reconsideration, just from my own personal perspective, when to me this is like bringing forward a notice of motion. So notice of motion will give us time to research and be at least a little bit educated in what the topic that we're being asked to reconsider is. So if you would indulge us possibly in the future with late items for reconsideration that are this timely and that are this significant and that we have received information. I just checked very quickly, February 20th, March 8th, March 16th, March 17th, from our city manager, from Liz Cookson at ABICC, from Bernie Dumas at the Port Authority. So there is a considerable thread of information that we have. And should I be able to make a rational decision on the fly, and unfortunately, I've been caught on the fly before trying to make decisions without enough information and notice in which to do it. So my question then is this just ABICC or is this the FCM as well? Because we've made this same resolution to both, I believe. So is it for
ABICC alone?
ABICC alone. So just to Ms. Gurry's point, I think it's already on the books. If there's information that you're seeking that you haven't been able to successfully achieve getting that information yet, I'd be happy to accommodate getting that information for you so that we can, and all of us can have the same information at the same time, so that we're all sort of reading off the same song sheet of the bullet points or the dashboard summary of whatever it is that we all need to be articulated on. And so that being said, the recommendation that I would be able to live with on this is let it stand and be removed at the floor. But in the meantime, let's get the information that you need, and this council might need next Monday, and put on our agenda then for next Monday. So I'd prefer to deal with this as a notice of motion versus a decision that we must make tonight. That would be my preference. Thank you.
So as it turns out, the reason I'm asking for reconsideration is because tomorrow the resolutions package will be, or Wednesday, pardon me, the resolutions package will be published. So at this particular point, I do not have clarity on being able to speak about this at AVICC. So if it's council's wish that they want to have this remain a resolution to go forward, I would certainly hope that one of the representatives that's at AVICC is going to be able to speak thoroughly and with great knowledge about why we want to do this. Because I, at this point, have great difficulty doing that. As we all know, when you're at convention, you're asked to go up as the sponsor of the resolution and explain why you want the delegates on the convention floor to vote in favor of your resolution. And if I don't have a clear understanding of it, we better do better than this. We better make sure that we have a clear understanding at the convention floor. Councillor Brennan.
Thank you. Just in terms of the process here, you've asked for reconsideration, and that's the first thing we're voting on is just yes, no on the reconsideration. Well, I would, it's hard to say, yes, I want to vote on the reconsideration without saying why I would be choosing to reconsider or not. So if I could talk on both of them, if your indulgence, I will. Just given the tight timelines, the information that we have and the information that we don't have as well, I guess my preference at this point would be to let it go forward, but in the interim, I too would like to be able to have a really clear, solid understanding of what it is we are trying to achieve with this motion at the AVICC. So first of all, I will not vote to support the reconsideration. Once the options come up, I would like to see us decide to go to the AVICC fully equipped with the ability to speak on this. And thirdly, I don't even know do we have a committee that is just City of Nanaimo and just Port Authority? Or is the only communication we have with them in this sort of formal sense is that the tripartite committee? So I guess that's a question I need answered now.
So we do have a Port City Liaison Committee.
Okay.
And that has Mayor McKay, Bill Beswick, and Councillor Yoakum on it, and then staff attend. And then staff regularly meet on a monthly basis on a range of files.
Okay.
And then it's also talked about at the tripartite one.
So I would really like to see that committee meet prior to the AVICC. Generally speaking, anyone can attend that, so you don't have a vote, but you can certainly attend to educate yourself. I would like to see that happen post-haste. I think that we have an obligation to our partner, the Port Authority, to get their input into what it is we are taking to the AVICC. I think I have an obligation to be equipped with all the information from all sides when I'm down there. So I'll vote not to reconsider, but instead to equip ourselves adequately for the debate down there.
Ms. Curry.
Bishop, just to be clear, when it's the mayor bringing forward a reconsideration, you're not going to vote on whether or not to reconsider. You're just going to reconsider the main motion again. So you're just going to go right into that vote.
So that being said, the alternatives that I put forward, Ms. Curry, those would only be if council chose to reconsider.
No, Your Worship. You, as the mayor, under 131 in the community charter, can bring forward a motion to be reconsidered. So, and when you do so, it just gets put right back on the floor. So right now, you're going to vote on that motion 06.
That's correct.
Right.
But
So then, once you've voted on that, if council didn't wish to not have that go forward, you would then vote on an alternative motion. You would move something else after this one was voted on.
okay, we've got Councillor Bestwick and Councillor Hong in the queue. Councillor Hong, I'm inclined to just call the question. Reconsideration of the motion. Okay, call the question. All those in favor?
So, Your Worship, just so you know, everybody would be in favor of putting this forward to AVICC. That's what you're voting for right now, is you're voting to adopt the resolution regarding the creating a fair market approach to the lease rates for marinas, and then direct me to forward those to AVICC. So
Correct.
that's what you're voting for
That's
right
correct.
now. So it was passed unanimously last time, just for those of you that don't remember.
Okay, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Councillor Brennan.
So could I ask, please, that staff be directed to set a meeting between the Port Authority and the City of Nanaimo, the representatives, to have a discussion with them with regard to the implications for this, their position on this, just a whole 360 on the impact of this on them, on us, and how they see it affecting the users, the marinas.
Craft that in a motion?
I thought I just did.
You do, but may I offer that next week we have coming on the motion, and it can be open or closed. I'm going to suggest open, that there be a presentation by the association that has been speaking with council and other stakeholders about their approach to it, and then invite representatives from the MPA to present on their methodology. And so all of council and the community will get an overview of all of this information. It has been presented. We did have some of this enclosed. And yes, I know we haven't rise to report on it, but this is not going to be the first time that we're going to get this information. But we might as well have it in an open forum so everybody can hear the different views, and then you're going to get feedback from your community and your voters about what's a good course of action to do.
So with regard to my motion, it is that a meeting be held with the committee that represents the port and the city to have a thorough discussion of the AVICC motion 06517.
Is there a seconder?
Seconded to put it on the floor.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Bestwick. All those in, Councillor Bestwick, you wish to speak to it.
I got to speak to it.
Thank you. Then just the format that this will take, because AVICC is what, the 7th, 8th, 9th of April? 7th to 9th. So if we are inviting people to come, is it for next week, the 27th? Is it April the 3rd? When are we inviting people to come to speak to this topic? So this topic's going to stay on the AVICC resolution list, and the only thing that can happen is if we don't like whatever comes out of March 27th or April 3rd, it's removed or withdrawn at the time of the AVICC. That's the only option to remove that will happen if we intend to have these meetings take place and these presentations and debates to take place on the merit of fairness and equity as it relates to tax and upland and water lot lease and all this other stuff. So there's been considerable conversation and dialogue take place at the meetings with the Port Authority that arrived with this very same motion that went to FCM. So I just asked the question: what are we going to accomplish? I think it's important that we get educated for those that aren't on the respective committees, but at the same time, for time, I think we're going to find ourselves in a difficult position.
So I need to, this is unfortunately a messy conversation to be having in open, but necessary because you're going to be making decisions. We've been trying for a long time to get that meeting set up without success. In my recent correspondence, but only at the staff level, not at the board level, I had preconditions before the board would meet with council. And the preconditions included taking this off of AVICC. So we have not satisfied that precondition. So while we can attempt to get the committee to meet again, and the committee has seen this, I think the gap is the rest of you have not seen this. So one workaround on it that doesn't require us complying with preconditions is having two sets of people that are ready to go. I know one set's going, and the other set is our representative on that board stepping forward and presenting the information to all of you. And that can happen next week. That's well in advance. That gives you time to do more stuff so that when you go to AVICC, you're fully educated, because I cannot guarantee you can pass that motion and direct me to do it, but I have a motion similar on the books that I've been unable to do that at this time.
Thank you. Councillor Fuller.
Kind of agreeing with everybody on this one. Yeah, if delegations are coming next week, that's great. All you can do is try and get a meeting if they refuse to meet. Nothing you can do about that. So putting an email out to the NPA board to meet with the city board, there's no harm in doing it. If they choose not to meet, they choose not to meet.
Councillor Hong.
Thank you. The reason I want this to continue on with AVICC, and we do need more information, is be prudent that the Port Authority come to us and provide the comparisons. I've never seen how the provincial government dictates their leases. Like you said, it's some sort of formula that we don't know how they do it. Nobody's told us. And if it takes us to bring this to AVICC and get AVICC to give us that information, so be it, because I would like to compare. I think that's one of the main reasons why Councillor Pratt brought this forward, is to be fair to the marinas that are under two separate jurisdictions. And I think we've been asking for clarification. Had this come forward from the MPA on their causes, on how they justify their rates compared to the federal provincial government, I don't think we would be bringing this to AVICC. So the concern I have is not knowing, and I don't know if we ever will. I would love to get the information so we don't have to do this, but I think it might have to take the AVICC to get us the information that we need. And that's the reason I support it. So, and I'll support staff and whatever, trying to get another meeting if we can to resolve this. And if we get the answers that we need, then we can pull this off AVICC and withdraw it at that time. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, in actual fact, there's three questions to be asked. How does the NPA do it? How does the province do it? And how does the Greater Victoria Harbour Authority do it? That's what I'd like to see, all three of them. Okay, Councillor Brennan.
Thank you. I'd like to see more than an email off to the MPA. I'd like to see personal contact from our staff to Mr. Dumas requesting this. I don't know that I've seen minutes come back from the dual committee between the two bodies. I would like to be directed to those so that I could find them and read what's been happening. And I guess I need to know who's going to be at the AVICC to help us shepherd this through. I'm going. I know you're going. Are you? And you usually go? Yes.
Just for the day. I don't stay.
Okay.
So it's my understanding Councillor Pratt, Thorpe, yourself, and myself will be going.
And Hong.
And spending days?
Yeah, nothing.
Coming there during the days?
Happens at night, but
Okay.
if you register, you should go to both days because we're paying for it. That's all I'm thinking.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Where's the facility?
That's my interest, is to get as much information so that we can put forward our argument at
Okay.
the podium.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, there's a motion on the floor. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, question period. Agenda items only, please.
Okay. So tonight's meeting, we had an addendum, and the items were brought forward, and I don't believe that they're elective, so that they must be essential, and these are the two reasons you'd bring forward an addendum. So what part which is brought forward tonight is considered, if not acted upon in a timely manner, would prejudice or compromise the city's position or the position of a constituent or a group of constituents? So why was this report brought forward by staff? And that would be the only reason it would be brought forward as an addendum.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Sammer.
I can't answer the liquor service license application. Mr. Lindsay, leave.
No. I'm sorry.
Sorry, it was a report by staff regarding change to bylaw 731.
Great.
7031.
7031 is what he's referring to.
So the compelling reasons to have this brought forward is that I'm currently on a different work schedule, and it was important to be able to have the chief financial officer to have appropriate powers to carry out any duties when I'm not in the office.
Okay. Now, I would like to ask some questions that I thought would be showing up in the minutes from the May 6th meeting. Some questions were asked at the end of that. Could I ask them tonight?
May 6th meeting?
Sorry, March 6th.
March 6th.
Yeah, the last council meeting.
I don't have them in front of me.
No, there's no minutes for the May 6th meeting here.
I know there, and ordinarily I would have thought they would have been at the next council meeting. The question that was asked is, how did the correspondence get on the addendum? Who asked them to be placed on the addendum? And we were told at that time that nobody knew.
Okay,
they're
so we're not
on
here
the
to talk
agenda.
about May 6th meeting or March 6th meeting. We're talking about agenda items for tonight, sir.
No. So how would one get an answer to a question they asked on March 6th which wasn't answered?
Either when the minutes come out or at a committee of the whole meeting.
Okay, so it's been 2 weeks since that meeting. Do you know when the minutes will be coming out for that meeting? So at which point we can get the answer to what I think is rather a simple question.
Ms. Scurry?
I believe they're scheduled to be on the next council agenda, so next Monday.
Next Monday? That works, sir?
So that kind of blows out my other question because it was on the minutes as well.
Okay, thank you.
So I guess can't answer that one.
Thank you. When the minutes come to the agenda, we can ask questions then.
Is it standard practice not to have the minutes at the next council meeting, or
Scurry?
Yes, Your Worship, we never have the minutes from the most recent council meeting at the next council meeting because we print the agendas the day after the meeting. So we print the 27th agenda tomorrow. So the minutes from this evening, even though that one was 2 weeks behind, and also we don't usually bring regular council meeting or COW minutes to, unless it's a COW meeting or a council meeting. So even on Monday, it's a special council meeting. It's not a regular, but I've just stated to Ms. Snellgrove that we'll put the March 6th minutes on there, even though.
That work?
it works? I guess the question is from citizens' point of view, if you ask a question in a meeting and there's no one's able to answer that, and they said they will get back to us, and 2 weeks later I still don't have an answer to the question, is it that I have to wait till the minutes come out before I can re-ask the question, or is someone actually just going to answer the question?
So you've had a staff member, you've asked a question, and the staff member has suggested that they'll get back to you on.
So they did, actually, I don't think they actually said that. They said they didn't know and they would find out.
Okay. So it would correct me if I'm wrong, but it would normally be that they would contact the person that's asking the question, would it be, or bring it, how would that?
Actually, Your Worship, I said I would look into it and let you know.
Okay, very good. There you go.
Okay, so it's been 2 weeks. Is staff still looking into it then?
Well, I've not corresponded. I've received no correspondence on it, so I suspect they are.
Okay. Do you know when we might get an answer to
No, I
that
don't.
question?
No, I don't. Ms. Curry, can you help me with that?
I still haven't had a response. I've been a little bit busy.
Thank you.
Okay. I'll wait for some minutes to come out so we can ask some more questions.
Thank you. Thank
Okay,
you.
Thank you.
Ms. Samurai, you chimed in.
No, I did
Okay.
not.
Thank you. All right. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Hong. Okay. Seconded by Councillor Veswick. All those in favor?
Are we going back into
Correct.
closed?
So motion to go back, to go in camera. Okay. Yes. 10-minute recess. Thank you.